Right, testing. 1, 2, 3. I think that's good. Okay, maybe I can. Let's do this. Okay. All right. Welcome back to this channel, I guess. And yeah, let's talk about. Let me mute myself. Let's talk about now. I guess where we left off from the last time I I was live, basically, which was yesterday for me. So you'll probably remember that I showed you the different text effects and stuff. And what I want to show you now is the implementation of these different backgrounds. So I'm just gonna let it run. Actually, I could probably show you the video because that would be maybe more. Is it this one? That will be more. Um, Here it is. That will be more fluid. Sorry, I was trying to open up the window. Let's make it just a little bit smaller. So you remember I mentioned that the backgrounds could be configured for the whole project, or um, that you could override stuff, override configurations per scene. And now what you could also do is change your background. So like I said, this video, this is the video player, should show that that video that I created, and it should be a little bit more fluid. So there we go. That's one of the new backgrounds that you can add to a Moliniani project. Here is the other one, and you can see they actually are morphing and changing as time goes on, right? And I will show you how that works in just a little bit. I just wanted to show what they look like and what stuff can be done with them. There's a little bit of a description there on the titles and stuff, but yeah, we'll go through that in a moment. And I wanted to create this kind of video, I guess, this live session, because I mean to stop working on Moliniani for a little while again and go back to the view stuff that I really need to work on. So yeah, I think the video is over by now. This is one that I really liked though. Anyway, so you could see there's a few more backgrounds that I added beyond beyond the squares, which are called groovy squares or something. So I think I can start from the implementation maybe. So let's go to the first new scene here. This is the one that had some issues, if you remember the video from yesterday. So we could go to, let's say it's supposed to take you to the scene. Yeah, there you go. It just took a little bit, and I haven't shown that. I haven't shown that before, but yeah, you can click on the title of the scene, and that will take you to the implementation file, which is really cool. All right, so nothing new down below here. Down below you can see we have normal text nodes which come from Motion Canvas. So these are pretty much, at this point, we should be familiar with them. But we implemented as well this flow field background component. And I'm trying not to give away a lot of it just yet, but you can see this is now imported from Moliniani components backgrounds. Give me just a second, I need to fix my... Hopefully you can still hear me after I do these things. And let me know, I guess, if you are out there, if anything broke. Hopefully not. I can still see. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just having issues with the audio. But okay, I was saying that this is the new kind of component that comes from Moliniani, and this is a collection of backgrounds that I want to, to expose, like a catalog of backgrounds. And this in particular is implemented in the scene itself, right? So the scene will load it, and one thing we could do probably is just say opacity, and you can tell the IntelliSense is working because this essentially is like an extension, as I've been mentioning before, of Motion Canvas. So the idea is to keep the API the same, to keep the development experience the same, and things like that. So let's do 0.2 maybe, and yeah, that's enough. So you can see now that we have the project based background definition. This is the second parameter to this make project function that we're bringing in from the Moliniani core, which is our kind of extension to or wrapper to Motion Canvas, I suppose, that integrates view stuff and now this notion of backgrounds per project, among other things. So yeah, make project accepts now a second parameter where you can say, okay, I'm gonna use the groovy squares background for all of the scenes unless they opt out of it, or like in this case, unless there's a new like what we would call this, the bottommost component, which is in this case going to be this background, right? What we could do to prevent this from happening, I guess, if we didn't want like the two backgrounds at the same time going, we could probably just remove just remove the, there we go, background from here. And now you can see, let's do 0.4. You can see the other background is by itself, right? So the color for the scene is letting in the background, because this now is transparent. And yeah, so we can play with that, but also there's other I guess knobs. I've been calling them knobs that you can tweak for the different backgrounds. So in this case, you can see there's a brightness, and there's a bunch of colors, because there's a whole palette of colors that you can use for your background. We've discussed height and width before, but then you have other stuff like noise scale. And what does this mean? You can see it by hovering over it, and you'll notice that there's a spatial frequency of the flow field. So we provide the range, and it goes from this number to this number, where the low number means la da da da. So that's something I wanted to provide. I think we lost the documentation that told you what the default value was, I think. But yeah, so let's change that to be, I don't know, this value, for example. And once I do that, you can see that the behavior of the background changes automatically. And so it now does a different thing, right? Let's go from there. And it doesn't do anything really until that point. So that was one thing. I wanted to keep the ability to change parameters, not only, as you can tell here, not only when you are defining or declaring your background, but also while animating it. So let's pause that there, and you will see that we have the signals being updated here. So speed, that will be part of the ref that we are doing for the background. So this guy here, bgref, is the one that's holding that. And then every knob that can be updated will be documented here. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to show you this, because I believe this will be helpful when using Moliniani. At least to me, because I will be able to, do these kinds of things. Although I'm not entirely sure I really want to do this like on the scene itself, to update the parameters kind of in a live way. Maybe it helps when, you want to emphasize that, I don't know, maybe a subject change within the same idea that we are presenting, or something like that. I don't know. Would be cool though if eventually in the future this could be like more of a creative thingy, where you could put audio that reacts to, or rather backgrounds that react to audio. But maybe this is not actually, the proper tool to do that. There must be other ways to actually accomplish that. But anyway, so that was an idea. So and the API for it is essentially this. We create the component, we bring it in from backgrounds, and then we put it at the top of the tree, I guess. One thing I haven't tried though is doing this, for example. Yeah, and since it's a background, yeah, it still acts as one. So even if I refresh the page, we are not on top of the other nodes, right? So I think that's great. All right. So, and you can see we have a bunch of documentation there. Not sure if it's actually like required, but at least better having it and not needing it than missing it and not being able to actually configure it the way we want it, right? I want to say. So let's put the opacity back to 1 to make it look cooler. Yeah, so that's the background. And I have to say I did not come up with this, just as the animations for the text. I found this place, the Radiant website, I guess, radiantshaders.com. And from what I gather, we are able to use these in other projects. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing. So the one you saw is exactly this one, where in this case it's a little bit more interactive. You can move the mouse around and the background will react to that, I think. So that's obviously not the same in Motion Canvas or Moliniani. Although you can see that the drawing of the path of the particles is kept there somehow, and I don't think we have that now that I am looking at it. But yeah, in this page, this website, you can change a few things like the color scheme. This reminds me a lot of my own Tlapali idea here with the theme for VS Code. You can change the flow speed and the scale of the pattern. You can see, yeah. So this could be like a reference maybe as well. Yeah, so you can see this is quite different from what you see on the other application. So let's try that. Flow speed and pattern scale. I guess it's gonna be speed. And this is not the quite right value because speed goes from, yeah, 0 to 6, I guess. Let's do 1. And then pattern scale. I guess this is gonna be it. And see what that does. I don't know, I'm just playing around with it. Yeah, so it's more similar to what we had on the website. Anyway, that's the idea. So the next one is the topographic shader, and that was the same idea. I went to this website and I said, okay, I like this one, so I want to bring that in. And you can see this reacts to a mouse, which is not going to happen on Moliniani, but same idea. You can change some parameters, and this is pretty much static or really fast. Sorry for sorry if you have some issues with getting dizzy or anything with this, but yeah, this is the sensitivity. This is the main idea. And since I just wanted to show you, and I already did, I think there's not many other things to say about this other than they would be available from here, from backgrounds. And we can probably do one more, I guess, one more thing to show. Could be if I hit shift and then drag this part, you will see that the playhead will be able to go farther left, which is what I want right now. So let's say I wanted to do the topographic background for all of the project instead of Groovy squares. Let's see if we can actually do that. So if I start typing topo, you will see that we get the IntelliSense, and that was important for me to still get the discoverability, I guess, for the different backgrounds that were available. So at that point, you will see that, and I'm not sure if these are actually, yeah, from 0 to 3. Yeah, there's a speed knob. Okay, so that kind of works for us, right? Let's maybe do it's color 3. So let's maybe do color 3. I don't know. Yeah, let's make them more bluish and change this here and this over here, or whatever. Yeah. So now we have a very different background for the whole video, and it probably moves way too fast for what I want. Then we can change the speed that goes from 0 to 1. So yeah. Yeah, and same thing we can do, for instance, update the background for all of them to be this one, kinetic center build. Wait, no. Kinetic grid background. There's no color 0 there. And as you can tell, yeah, there's an error here because that's not part of the props, which is good, I'm gonna say. But instead of that, I think backdrop is what we want. And then what else do we have here? Damping, density. And density could go from 0.5 to 2. 1 is the original, which sometimes the documentation has that and sometimes it doesn't, so I need to take a look at that. Yeah, but let's do 0.7 to make them a little less. Yeah, so here you go. I think this gives you an idea of the potential for this kind of thing to be ready in a package already set for whatever you need to do. And like I said before, the fact that you can sync this to audio cues is really cool, and it's very powerful and allows you to create very, very nice, sleek content, right? Some cool videos that I hope that I will be able to come up with later on. When I do get more ideas of what stuff I could talk about, because that's the other thing. The important bit is the content, not always a presentation. But if we get something cool to see for other people to see, then the content will be in good hands, I guess. Finally, last time I mentioned a few times the AI and stuff, and I just wanted to show you how I went about doing things. Maybe that helps to give you ideas, or maybe you can tell me I'm doing it all wrong. But let's go to here. I think this is this is where I started. Where was it? Here, I think. So I started by telling the open code agent, and I haven't really changed the models yet. I've been using DeepSeek before Flash Free here. And the idea was first to go into plan mode and then ask the AI, you know, I have this kind of background that I already used in my video, but I want to create like a catalog of more ideas for backgrounds, and I want that to be exposed as a Moliniani components or whatever it is. And I want to see what we can do with that. And then I asked it, what about having a project level configuration that we can do for the whole thing? And this was through this grill me skill, which I don't know, heard or read or saw somewhere that it was a good idea to have that in your project to first get a very narrowed and locked decisions in your plan, so that when implementing it would be easier for the AI to go through that and do the things. So yeah, well, I went back and forth with different options of how to do things, and one was like this example. There could be a plugin for Motion Canvas to create the backgrounds, and the other was creating a wrapper just like we did for make scene, and then have a new function that acts very similar to what Motion Canvas already does, but then enhance it or enrich it, I guess, with more options. We ended up going with a wrapper in the end, like I showed you, and things like that. So once we implemented the first background, and I was kind of happy with it, because, well, this is actually just planning. And then you can see the grilling is complete at this point. Yeah, just going back and forth, trying to figure it out. And then this other skill, handoff skill, I asked, I ran the command, I guess. I ran the skill, and then it created the markdown for it. I did ask it to please write it somewhere in the project. I didn't want to lose it. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's like the proper way to do it. But yeah, I asked it here to create that. And so now that we had the handoff created, then I went here into a new session and I said, okay, please implement a handoff. And now it was time to actually go through that markdown and implement the actual background for the groovy background thing, right? The squares that pop in and out. So once that was done, then I said, okay, so we are at a good spot, I guess. And now what we can do is try and implement the other new background. So my first attempt was like very rudimentary, I guess. I went here and said it was actually, the fluid or flow field. And I said, okay, maybe I can just grab the script tag here. And that's actually what I did. I grabbed the whole implementation of the shader at this point. And I said, okay, please take this and turn it into a motion canvas background, right? And it didn't quite work. It it failed at doing it. Essentially, the background didn't look the same, although it looked cool. It wasn't the same. So I started going back and forth again with the AI and telling it, okay, there's something not going right. There's something missing here. I don't see the same effects as I am expecting, things like that. And I even went to a different model. I used the web-based Claude, I think, to try and recreate the GLSL file, because you will see that the backgrounds have different approaches, and that's where I was going. So you will see that Groovy Squares has a GLSL file because that's how it was it was born that way. But then when implementing the field background, let me see if I can actually, flow field background, I can show you. So this is a different way of doing things. Well, this is just how to expose it, if I'm not mistaken. But then there's the renderer here, which is basically acting as the actual port of the code that I showed you earlier for the page, right? So this code here is ported into the renderer, which is, if I'm not mistaken, a different implementation from what the Groovy Squares does. Because this one, instead of a renderer, has a shader, which is then exported here. Here, shader, this fragment key. That's how some of them are done, and then some of the others are done via this renderer, which is not bringing in any GLSL definition, right? It's doing everything on the canvas itself, and that's pretty much what I can explain about the implementation and how it does things. Fortunately, it also created tests and everything. At one point, let me see if I can find it. At one point I here asked it to please create like a recipe or something to that other sessions can read and can go through the whole thing, because like I said, when I copy pasted the code, it realized that I was trying to do something different from the Groovy Squares background thing, and it said, okay, you probably want to do like another way of implementing backgrounds, so let's do that. And I said, okay, now that we got the flow field background going, then let's create that as a recipe for bringing in the code and then implementing the rest of the backgrounds. And so it did. It created that recipe, like I said, and then started updating, as you can tell here, the docs for the IDE and stuff that I mentioned before. So these guys, being able to read here what everything does was important for me. So that's something I had to direct the AI to do. And then it's always trying to update the documentation and the tests and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure it's going to show here, but at one point I also asked it to please not to write the tests or update the documentation before I actually went and saw the actual background running in the UI for Motion Canvas or for Moliniani. So maybe I can go in here here you go. So at this point on this new session, I just asked it to go into the website and implement it, right? And so first it went to get the pattern, and then there's a place where it decides. It says, okay, um, this is not a fragment shader. We can do the same canvas 2 renderer, and so it went ahead with that, which means that if I try to load the topographic one, well, this is the scene, but I actually wanted this is gonna be it. It's a renderer instead of a shader, if we want to look at it that way. So yeah, now with the kind of like the recipe that we created, every time I asked it to go into the Radiant Shaders website, it will decide whether or not to use the fragment, the shader, or just the 2D canvas, which is very helpful actually. So yeah, it decides that and then asks a few questions with the documentation that will be added. I think it also asks me to, yeah, here it is. I read the agents, and it says I shouldn't do anything else before you go and try it on the playground. At this point, it creates by itself the scene for me. And then, yeah, I asked a couple questions. What are the labels? I don't see labels on the website, things like that. And then once I'm okay with the whole plan, then I ask it to implement it, and it goes and does that. Let me go back to another session now. Switch session. And the latest one, I think it's this, which is, I think, more of the same. I think there was a little bit of a difference. Oh yeah. So at this point, what you could do was, like I showed you here, you could see what contours do for this particular background, right? So it's the number, has a range of this and that, but when you wanted to, if you ever wanted to update it here down below, you wouldn't be able to see this part. So I asked the AI to please update them both basically at the same time so that they matched for one, and for another that I should be able to actually see what this signal updating value would do, right? So calling label size as a method here, what it should do, it should show me the documentation. So that's something I needed to go and ask the AI to also change for me. And yeah, I wish we could do this like in an actual live manner where you can kind of be with me while I'm doing stuff, but it's not really possible at the moment. I will be trying to do that later on, as the same as we do with a mostly view. But in the meantime, excuse me, this is basically what I can give. The kind of like the summary of what happened, as in a bit of a devlog thingy. Anyway, so that's it. I think that's all I wanted to share. Yeah, I think one last thing would be like, there's one point where I ask it to commit the changes, but that's not until we are done with all the updates. That's also part of the kind of like the recipe that I asked it to write. So yeah, it's been really interesting. It's been really great to be able to do these things. Like I implemented this in a day. Once in a couple, we figured out how to do backgrounds. Then in just one day, we ported all of the different ones to Moliniani, which I am very proud of. Gotta say. In any case, thanks a lot for watching. This was a little bit of a shorter one, and that was on purpose. But thank you for watching again, and I'll catch you later on. Bye.